With all the returning production at Illinois, a lot of national excitement and attention go to the Fighting Illini. A lot of people having them in the preseason top 10. Are they going to be worthy of all that praise? Are they going to live up to the hype? Thank you guys for tuning in. I am Colin Bashnagel, your host here at Bash the CFB Show. You can find me over here on TikTok, where we have a lot more short form content that is very interactive. So make sure you hop over there and check it out. This is more long form, obviously, on YouTube. So make sure you comment down below what team you want to see next and what you think of this video, this breakdown of Illinois, and how you think the Fighting Illini are going to do in 2025. Make sure you like the video if you like the video and subscribe for more college football content. I've definitely prioritized a lot more stuff over the last couple of weeks, but I'm trying to fit this into my schedule. And the good thing that I have going for me over here is that I have really good notes from the spring already taken down. And then I go back and I watch a couple of games of these teams from a year ago to try to get my feet wet, check out some impact transfers. That's the type of stuff that I do. And I've been watching Illinois for a couple of weeks since I have been preparing this video for a little too long. Enough about that, though. We're going to talk about the Fighting Illini, starting with the 2024 review. It definitely had its ups and downs, but mostly ups, especially because the expectation going into the season for Illinois last year was not very high whatsoever. They end up going and beating Nebraska on a Friday night that woke people up a little bit, setting up a pretty big matchup against Penn State where they just did not show up whatsoever. Their offense could not get going on the road in that whiteout environment, but they end up bouncing back with a big win against Michigan. They also were able to win a couple of games late in the year where they pulled out some thrillers. They got blown out against Oregon, lost one to Minnesota, and when they got to the bowl game to South Carolina, it's like, all right, they probably should have lost to Rutgers, pulled that off in the end. They probably played with a little bit too much food, I guess, with Northwestern and Purdue, nearly losing those two games. So going into the bowl game, the expectation was South Carolina angry, thinking that they should probably be in the playoff. They end up going out and beating the Gamecocks in a way that was very physical, and also where their offense was very complementary to their defense that seemed to have had their ups and downs at the same time. But they returned a lot from that team a year ago. So the big impact that I want to talk about them losing is Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin are very hard to replace on the outside. They tried to address it through the portal a little bit, bringing in Hudson Clement from West Virginia, and that's definitely big time. But I still don't know if they have the wide receiver threats that they had a year ago for Luke Altmyer returning for another year, who, by the way, was offered apparently a lot of NIL to go to places like Tennessee in the SEC. They really wanted to get this kid away from Illinois, and Luke Altmyer is fully bought in to what they're bringing back. Also, on the offensive side of the ball, though, you can look at the running back, Aiden Lafferty, as a player who stepped up later in the year, a younger player, kind of a big reason why Josh McCray transferred. Caden Fegan is also back. Khalil Valentine had his moments, too, as a little bit more of the shifty third down back. So I think this Illinois running back room, behind an experienced offensive line with a lot of seniors, they should be able to run the ball rather effectively. And I am very high right now on Aiden Lafferty, the young redshirt junior at this point, fourth-year kid, but last year really hitting the scene late. I think that kid is primed for a big year. Out wide, we already addressed Hudson Clement, but what else do they bring back at the wide receiver position? You could talk about Colin Dixon coming in at the slot. Also, Hank Beatty ended up playing a lot with those guys in that slot role. So both of those guys are going to look to make an impact. And then Malik Elzy is going to have the tall task of trying to replace Pat Bryant in that X position, the isolated wide receiver position. And they do bring back tight end Tanner Arkin. So that is definitely a big deal for Illinois on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, I really like what they have done on the defensive side of the ball, building experience. They're going to have a really good secondary. I look at Miles Scott, the safety, who is a big guy, who's also very athletic. You know, he's somebody who could definitely roll and play into the run game a little bit, roll into the box. but he can also cover. He's got good coverage skills, and he definitely showed that many times last year. Leon Lowry is a player that I'm very high on, a linebacker that they brought in from Wisconsin within the last couple of years. Gabe Jacas, a really good defensive lineman as well, and they're just experienced all around on the defensive side of the ball. So I think ultimately this Illinois team, they're going to be a step up on the defensive side of the ball, a little bit more consistent with all that experience. The question is, can the offense produce the way that they did last year? Because I think that was an underrated offense last year when you look at what they had in the throw game and then how the run game could get going at certain points. All right, as we take a look at this Illinois schedule, you start off with one of the worst FCS programs out there in the Leathernecks of Western Illinois, but a tough road game week 2 at Duke. Manny Diaz really has that train rolling and quietly was a very solid team last year. I think they could definitely be a solid team again. That'll be a tough game. Western Michigan closes out the non-con. As I get into the conference slate, the first 4 games, 3 of the 4 you could argue is really, really tough. And then the one at Purdue, you know, a change in the head coach over there to Barry Odom. We'll see what Purdue looks like in year 1 and with Barry Odom, but I definitely think that that's a big rebuild right there. But Indiana, they're still going to be a really solid team. That's going to be a tough road trip. They're going to be 3-0 in the non-con. Their non-conference schedule is not very good, so that'll be 3-0, 3-0. Going at it right there in Bloomington, and maybe the hype will still be there. USC has something to prove. They have a chance to be undefeated with Illinois as well, setting up a big-time matchup there in Champaign. And then Ohio State welcoming the Ohio State Buckeyes into Champaign for the Illabuck Trophy. I think Ohio State is not really going to take too much of a step back from last year's national championship team, so that's going to be a pretty tall task. At Washington off the bye is going to be a really tough road trip, even if it's off the bye. They're going to be a gritty team and a tough team to go up against in Jed Fish's second year. Rutgers is going to be a pretty solid program. They're not supposed to be somebody you're going to sleep on, and Illinois almost lost that game last year. Off the bye, they play Maryland and then a tough road test at Wisconsin before closing out against Northwestern in the final game. All right, so let's get straight to the predictions here for the Illinois Fighting Illini, returning a lot of production on both sides of the ball. They have no problem with those 2 Western directional school out-of-conference games. Western Michigan, Western Illinois should not be a problem. They're going to win both those games. At Duke is going to be very interesting. You know they're going to have a tough defense. This is going to be a test for that wide receiver room. I think they're going to be able to run the ball and impose their will, though, in this game. And I really think that Darian Mensah in this offense is going to be suffocated a little bit. I think Illinois guts out a low-scoring victory in a really gritty fashion on the road at Duke. At Indiana is another tough game. You look at what Indiana has this upcoming year. They have Fernando Mendoza coming over. Roman Henby ended up transferring from Maryland to Indiana. You also bring back Elijah Surratt out wide. This Indiana team is not going to be very bad whatsoever. I think that too many people expect for them to dip. I don't believe that Kurt Cignetti is equal to the 2021 Mel Tucker Michigan State team, but I do think Illinois will be able to gut out another victory. Just that experience on the offensive line is going to be very important early on in the season for those 2 road trips. USC, though, I think Danton Lynn is going to have a really good plan for this Illinois offense based on the film that they got from 2 very tough games that Illinois is going to have to win on the road. And I think that this USC offense could present a lot of challenges for Illinois with the athletes that they have at the wide receiver room, and Jaden Mayava is a really efficient quarterback. I do think USC goes on the road and pulls off a big win in Champaign, knocking Illinois to 4-1. They bounce back and beat probably the bottom dweller of the Big Ten in Purdue before returning back home to play Ohio State. I keep stuttering. I'm sorry about that, by the way. First video in a while. We got to shake off some rust. Ohio State at home. This is going to be a huge challenge for Ohio State to be focused and ready to go. If Illinois is 5-0 going into this game and that USC result changes, I think they're going to have Ohio State's attention more. I think that Illinois keeps this game very close, but I just think Ohio State has the better players on the offensive side of the ball, and this is going to be a really tall task for Illinois to pull it off. I think Ohio State wins by a touchdown, where Illinois kind of scores late to make it closer. Ohio State ends up pulling it out, though, like 27-20 or something like that. I mean, this Illinois team is going to present challenges, but I think Ohio State's athletes will be able to get it done. Off the bye, playing against Washington on the road, this is going to be a really tough Washington team. You saw what you got from Damon Williams a year ago. Jonah Coleman is back. David Boston, excuse me. Denzel Boston out wide is a really fun player to look at. I just really think that this Washington team might be getting a little bit too much preseason love. And I think Illinois off the bye is able to go out west and get a huge victory. They return back home for a tough game. And I think Rutgers is going to play them close again. But I think Illinois pulls it out in a close one late. Yet again, that experience will end up being the reason why they pull this one out. Being in these situations, in these close games already multiple times this year, losing one or two, winning one or two close games. I think if this is a close game, you got to give the edge to the Fighting Illini. Off the bye, playing Maryland, this is a big year for Mike Locksley, and I just don't see it with this Maryland team this year. I got Illinois winning that game back at home, so they're going to improve to, what is that, 7-2, 8-2 going into the final? Yeah, 8-2 going into the final couple of weeks. Wisconsin, could this be a really rough year for Luke Fickell and this team? I absolutely think it could be another tough year, but I think that they could close the season out very well. See, Illinois going on the road to Wisconsin is similar to when they played Minnesota last year. It's a game late that you could maybe sleep on if you're Illinois and your talent is not necessarily so much higher than that other team. If Wisconsin's got the offense somewhat figured out by this point, I think that the Badgers are going to present a lot of issues for Illinois on both sides of the ball. Their defense keeps this one low scoring, and Wisconsin pulls it out. Then they play Northwestern. Northwestern gave them a gritty game in Wrigley Field a year ago. I think it could be gritty yet again, but I just don't think they have the horses to beat the Fighting Illini this year. So that's going to make Illinois 9-3, same record as last year, 6-3 in conference play. But I definitely think that you could see this Illinois team flip one of those L's, maybe even two of those L's. Wisconsin and USC are the two that I'm looking at are L's that I think that could be flipped into W's, but you could also look at games like Duke, Indiana, Washington as games you could flip into L's that I had as W's. So I think 9-3 is a pretty safe pick for the Fighting Illini. And I think that this team, though they're really experienced and they're going to present a lot of problems and be a very solid team, I just don't think they have the top end talent to compete with some of these other teams. And they're going to lose a game that they probably should not lose. Illinois 9-3, 6-3 in conference. Thank you guys for tuning in. Really appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next video. We got the Mississippi State Bulldogs queued up, and we'll talk about them coming up shortly. Have a good one. And make sure you guys stay safe out there.